Good morning again, Honors Math. So hopefully the multiplication video went well. Today we are going to focus on division. Some of this is going to feel like review and some of it's going to feel new, and that's okay for both. So here we go. And the rule, and same thing for today. Some problems we'll do together. Some problems I'll have you pause and stop and work on them yourself. Again, you're going to take notes, and your assignment is going to be to submit your notes in Canvas today. All right, here we go. All right, so here we go. So division of exponents. Before break, I talked to you about, before we even left school, back on whatever that last day was that we were at school, we talked about when you're dividing that you technically you subtract the exponents, but I talked to you guys about how I actually call it playing a game, and whichever one wins, that's where the extra exponents go, and I'll explain as I go. So again, let's go ahead and start. Let's do this one together, and then I'll give you guys one to practice by yourself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a big circle around the coefficients because they do not follow what I said about the exponents because they're coefficients. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to say to ourselves, negative 24 over 36 is just a normal fraction. We're going to reduce it. So 24 and 36 are both divisible by 12. So if we reduce this, it becomes negative 2/3. Okay, so now we're going to focus on the variables. So if I look at x to the fifth and x to the second, and I ask myself which one wins by how many, 5 is bigger than 2 by 3, so the top x wins by 3. All right, if I look at the y's next, okay, if I look at the y's, y to the third and y to the third means nobody wins. They all cancel out. So technically the y's are totally gone. We don't even put a y in the answer. That's done. All right, next, if we focus on the z's, z to the sixth, z to the fifth, which one wins by how many? The top wins by 1. So we're going to put a z on the top. And you can put a 1 on the z, but because it's a 1, you don't actually have to do it. And that's your answer. All right, here's problem 2, very similar to problem 1. So I want you to pause the video and work it out, and we'll go over it here in just a second together. All right, so problem number 2. I'm going to do it exactly like I did problem 1. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to circle my coefficients because they don't follow exponent rules. If I look at negative 18 and negative 14, first of all, 2 negatives make a positive, and then 18 and 14 are divisible by 2. So I'm going to get 9 sevenths. All right, so next I'm going to focus on my m's. So if I look at m to the fourth over m to the ninth, which m wins by how many? The bottom wins by 5. So I'm going to get m to the fifth on the bottom because it won by 5. So it goes on the bottom. N to the sixth and n to the second, which n wins by how many? The top by 4. And then lastly, if you look at the p's, which p wins by how many? The top by 4. And there's your answer. Okay, here's problem 3. I'm sure you can tell by now I have figured out how to change the background colors. I'm getting a little crazy with my colors on my slides, but it makes it kind of fun. Okay, so here's number 3. So now we've got division involved, but we also have power to a power. Now, you have a couple of choices here. You could, if you wanted to, you could simplify inside the parentheses first and then do the power to a power, but I still always do the power to a power first. So we're going to do this one together, and then again, the next one I'll have you try by yourself. All right, so let's begin on the inside. So first thing it says is negative 2 to the third. I'm starting at the top. So I'm just going to write negative 2 to the third. I'm not even going to mess with that yet. And then power to a power, x to the 6th to the third is going to be x to the 18th because you multiply powers. Y to the 2nd to the third is going to be y to the 6th. Z to the 7th to the third is going to be z to the 21st. Okay, now we're going to move to the bottom. And first of all, the coefficient is 3, and it's going to be cubed. And again, we'll come back and do those later. X to the 4th to the third is going to be x to the 12th. This y has an imaginary 1 on it, so 1 times 3 is y to the third. And then z to the 5 to the third is going to be z to the 15th. All right, so we've done our power to a power. So now we're ready to start simplifying, working with the coefficients, and so forth. So let's start with negative 2 to the third. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then on the 3 to the third on the bottom, 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And then, of course, at this point, you probably should ask yourself, does negative 8 over 27 reduce? It doesn't, so that's done. So now I'm ready to look at the x's. X to the 18th, x to the 12th. The top x wins by 6. Y to the 6th, y to the 3rd. The top y wins by 3. That's a 3. And then lastly, the z's. Z to the 21st over z to the 15th. The top z wins by 6. So there's my answer that I have. Negative 8, x to the 6th, y to the 3rd, z to the 6th over 27. All right, here's the next question, and it's very similar to the last one. I want you to try it by yourself. And then again, come back and we'll work it out together, see if we match on our answers, and you can see if you made any mistakes. All right, here we go. Go ahead and work the problem out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So I'm going to start on the top, and I have negative 2 to the third power. And then x to the 8th to the 3rd is going to be x to the 24th. Y to the 4th to the 3rd is y to the 12th. And then, of course, there's an imaginary 1 on the z. So 1 times 3 is 3. On the bottom, I have negative 4 to the 3rd. X to the 3rd to the 3rd is x to the 9th. Y to the 6th to the 3rd is y to the 18th. Z to the 4th to the 3rd is z to the 12th. Okay, now we're ready to start working it out and simplifying. All right, so if I look at negative 2 to the 3rd and negative 4 to the 3rd, I'm going to work those out, but I have to be careful because I got to remember at some point I'm probably going to need to reduce these. So negative 2 to the 3rd, negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 4 to the 3rd, negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4 is negative 64. Now, if you want, right now you can reduce it, or you can wait until the next step. But I know 2 negatives make a positive, and I know 8 goes into 64 8 times. So I know eventually I'm just going to have an 8 on the bottom. Okay, if I look at my x's here, 24 and 9, which one wins by how many? The top by 15. So that's x to the 15th. And then if I look at my y's, y to the 12th over y to the 18th. The 18 wins by 6. And then z to the 3rd and z to the 12th. The bottom z wins by 9. So my final answer down here is x to the 15th over 8, y to the 6th, z to the 9th. And there's my answer. All right, here's question 5. It's not much different from the last one. It's just now we have a power to a power on the top and a power to power on the bottom. So they're different power to a powers. So if you want to go ahead and try it and work it out by yourself and come back and watch me, or we can work it out together, whichever way you prefer. All right, so here we go. For number 5, I'm going to start with, at the top, I've got negative 3 to the 3rd. And again, I don't work on that until later. X to the 8th to the 3rd is x to the 24th. These are very bright colors this time on my screen. Y to the 6th to the 3rd is y to the 18th. Z to the 2nd to the 3rd is z to the 6th. On the bottom, I have 9 squared. There is an imaginary 1 on that x. So x to the 1st to the 2nd is x to the 2nd. Y to the 4th to the 2nd is y to the 8th. Z to the 5th to z to the 2nd is z to the 10th. Okay, I'm ready now to start working this out. Negative 3 cubed. So negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is negative 27. 9 squared on the bottom is 81. I need to remember to come back and reduce this, because if you don't reduce it, you would miss the entire problem, because that right there would be 2 mistakes if you didn't reduce. X to the 24th over x to the 2nd is going to give me x to the 22nd on the top. Y to the 18th over y to the 8th is going to give me y to the 10th on top. And z to the 6th over z to the 10th is going to give me z to the 4th on the bottom. Okay, so now let's think about reducing this. So let's see what happens. I can take a 9 out of the 27. That gives me a 3. Don't forget there's a negative on it. And then 9 out of 81 is 9. But now I've got 3 over 9. That reduces again. So this becomes a 1. This becomes a 3. So my final answer to this problem, first of all, you need to know that negative can go on the top or the bottom. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put it on the top. And then I have x to the 22nd, y to the 10th, over 3, z to the 4th. Now the 3 has to go on the bottom. But if you want, you could put the negative on the 3. It doesn't matter where that negative is. And that's your final answer. All right, here's problem number 6. All right, so this time it's kind of like back in multiplication. We've got two kind of separate problems here that we're going to put together. But again, you always want to do the power to a power, and then you're going to, once you're done with the power to a power, then you start simplifying. We'll work this one out together because it's a little different. We haven't done anything like this yet. So here we go. Let's start with the first parentheses and do the power to a power. So we've got 5 squared. We have x to the 4th. There's a 1 on the y, so y squared. On the bottom, my coefficient is 2, so 2 squared. X to the 10th, y to the 6th. So there's what I have first on that one, okay? And we'll come back and do simplifying and stuff here in a minute. So now let's work on the second parentheses. So here I've got 2 to the 3rd to the 2nd. So 3 times 2, that's 2 to the 6th. X to the 6th to the 2nd is x to the 12th. And then on the bottom, 4 times 2 is y to the 8th. All right, so here's where we're at. All right, so first of all, let's talk about all of these coefficients. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a fraction, and this is what we have. I'm not going to multiply these out, and I'll show you why here in a minute. So I have 5 squared, and I have 2 to the 6th, and I have 2 to the 2nd. If I multiply those out, those numbers get really big, and what happens is sometimes we forget to simplify, and if you don't simplify, you're going to miss the entire problem. So think about it. If I have 2 to the 6th on the top and 2 to the 2nd on the bottom, which one wins by how many? So 2 to the 6th by 4. So I'm going to have 2 to the 4th on the top, and then I'm going to have 5 squared. Now again, I'll come back and multiply these out later. Now, if I look at my x's, okay, so I have x to the 4th in the first parentheses, I have x to the 12th in the second parentheses, and I have x to the 10th on the bottom. Okay, now if you want, you could add the top ones together in one step and then simplify it however you want. But if you think about it, these two together are 16, and I have 10 on the bottom, so the x on top wins by 6. So I have x to the 6. Now, I did that in one step. You don't have to. You could do that in separate steps if you want. Look at the y's. I have y squared on top, y to the 6th on the bottom, y to the 8th on the bottom. So let's see here. Together, these are 14. So I have y to the 2nd over y to the 14th, so that gives me y to the 12th on the bottom. Okay, I can't leave my answer like this. So if I think about this, this is 25 and this is 16. So 25 times 16 is 400. And then I have x to the 6th on the top, and I have y to the 12th on the bottom. So that's what this problem turns into. Okay, here's the next problem. This one looks a little strange. We haven't done one like this yet. Now, if you want to try it by yourself and come back, that's fine. But otherwise, I'm going to start doing it with you. So here we go. So the way I do this is I look at this as two separate problems, and then I'll put them together at the end. So if I start on the left side, and I look at my coefficients, and I have -8 over -6, I can tell myself two negatives make a positive. 8 over 6 divide by 2, so I get 4/3. Okay? So now if I look at my x's on this first fraction, x to the 6th over x to the 3rd, that simplifies to x to the 3rd on top. The y's, what happens to the y's? Y to the 6th and y to the 6th, they totally cancel out, so I have no y's there. If I look at the z's, the top z wins by 5. All right, so now I'm ready to look at the second fraction. Let's look at my coefficients, 3 and 12. What's that do? That becomes 1/4. If I look at my x's, x to the 9th, x to the 3rd, top x wins by 6. if I look at my y's, y to the second, y to the fourth, bottom wins by 2. And then don't forget that little lonesome z right there. So we got to put that in. So here's what I'm at so far. So now I'm ready to put these together. So if I look at my coefficients, I've got a 4, a 1, a 3, and a 4. I can simplify those, and I get 1/3. And then if I look at my x's, x to the third, x to the sixth, there's no x's on the bottom, so that means I just have x to the ninth on top. There's only one y on the bottom, so that's y squared. And then if I look at my z's, I have z to the fifth and I have z to the first, so that gives me z to the sixth on the top. So I would prefer you rewrite this answer so it looks better. I don't need that 1 on top, so it's x to the ninth is z to the sixth over 3y squared. Done. Okay, last one. All right, so again, if you want to try it by yourself, go ahead and then come back and watch me go through it. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start on the top and I'm going to do the first power to a power. So if I have 3 squared to the third, then that's 3 to the sixth. X to the second to the third is x to the sixth. Y to the fourth to the third is y to the 12th. So my first power to a power gives me that. Now in the second power to power, I have to be very careful. There's an imaginary 1 right here. So if I have -1 to the third, think about that. -1 times -1 times -1, that's just -1. And then I have x to the 18th, y to the 12th. Okay, so this whole problem is over 6x to the 9th, y to the 3rd. All right, now, again, you can work this problem out kind of however you want. So let's start with the coefficients, okay? So here's what we have. We've got 3 to the 6th times -1 over 6. All right, so if I think about this, now think about this. So 3 to the 6 is 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Before I multiply it out, I'm going to think about what can happen here. Well, 6 has a 3 in it, so I can just do this. I can make this a 2 and mark out one of those 3's. And then, of course, I got to do 3 to the 5th. Okay, 3 to the 5th is 729. Okay, so far this problem, we have 729 and a -1, so that's a -729, and then over 2. All right, now we're ready to start working on the variables. So I have x to the 6th, I have x to the 18th, and I have x to the 9th. Okay, so x to the 6th and x to the 18th is going to give me x to the 24th over x to the 9th. Let's see what happens there. That becomes x to the 15th on the top. And then all I have left is my y's. So I have y to the 12th, y to the 12th, and y to the 3rd. So that gives me, let's see here, y to the 24th on top and y to the 3rd on the bottom. So that gives me y to the 21st on top. So the big thing here on these problems, guys, you've got to be very careful. Notice how I circle and underline and do everything. I don't try to do too many steps at a time because that's where you make silly mistakes. And again, like I mentioned in the last video, if you miss one little thing, you've already missed half credit. Like on this particular problem, let's say you forgot the negative. Everything else is right. You would get 1 out of 2 points. But as soon as you miss something else, you just lost all those points. You've got to be very, very careful. This is not something you can do quickly. All right, please don't forget your weekly skills are due, what did I say, next Wednesday. Tomorrow, you will be getting an assignment over multiply and divide. You may need to go back to these videos and back to your notes to actually help you as you do that. Okay, so I would suggest you get your weekly skills done so that tomorrow you can just focus on the assignment that I give you. Have a great day.